Capitalism is as American as apple pie. A simple internet search of Americana will reveal that corporate brands are ubiquitous throughout the landscape of the United States. But the biggest companies aren't necessarily the ones with theme parks with fluffy mascots. There are plenty of huge businesses that hide behind subsidiaries. In the case of Amway, part of their longevity has been down to having friends in very high places. Very high places. Even George Bush Jr. gave the eulogy at the funeral of one of the founders. Longevity is also helped by having a couple hundred or so billion in the bank too, especially when they have to fork out tens of millions of dollars to settle out of court every time the FTC does another investigation into pyramid scheme practices. For many, Amway is a cult-like scam whose operators should be in jail. For others, it's an innovative business structure who has a right to keep their cards close to their chest. Is this a case of haters gonna hate or scammers gonna scam? Both of these opinions seem appropriate for a company whose name is short for American Way.
Understood everything. I saw that it was pretty simple.
And with an Amway business, you can start creating revenue day one. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
So it's time to learn how history works as we unravel the corporate history of Amway. First things first, what is Amway and how the hell do they make their money? It was founded on November 9th, 1959, by school friends Richard DeVos and J. Van Andel, although some sources say they met in the Air Force. Together, they started many business ventures, including a hamburger stand and a sailing business, but eventually they got the idea for their own direct sales company when they experienced the business model firsthand. Way back in 1949, shortly after serving in World War II, the duo were introduced to the Nutrilite Products Corporation, where individuals purchase supplies to sell door to door, like being an Avon lady, except instead of lipstick and hairspray, it's powdered soup and snake oil. The idea is the supplier saves money on competing for space on store shelves and billboard placement, where the sales rep doesn't deal with any middlemen of their own. You can already see the initial appeal. Who doesn't want to be in charge of their own working hours? Yet, it only took 2 weeks for Richard and Jay to lose interest. That should have been the end, but they were nagged by a mutual friend to give the venture another shot, so they did. They attended seminars and talks by company representatives. They watched newsreels made by the Nutrilite company and heard testimony of successful distributors. Now, they were inspired. In fact, they were so inspired that they turned their furniture importing company into a dedicated Nutrilite distribution center. Within 10 years, they had recruited 5,000 or so distributors of their own. However, they soon broke away to create Amway to focus on beauty, health, and home care products. At the time, Nutrilite was involved in a dispute with the FDA over false advertising claims. Shipments were seized by authorities where a booklet was discovered claiming that the products cured diseases that they simply did not cure. In response, the distributor brought a suit against the government body, claiming that the confiscation was unconstitutional, but the US Supreme Court ruled in the FDA's favor. Nonetheless, the lawsuit made Richard and Jay fear for their job security, which is why they set up their own company in 1959, later renamed to Amway in 1963. Then, in 1972, they bought most of Nutrilite before owning it all in 1994. That's quite a story of the American dream, so what's the catch? As you might expect, the details are in the fine print. Amway would pitch themselves as a direct selling company or networking marketing company, which is a jazzy way of saying multi-level marketing. Now, that's not exactly the same thing as a pyramid scheme. Check out our video on how money works to understand the difference. But for most people, it's close enough. After all, members are incentivized to recruit new people into the business, and of course, you must pay to become a member. People certainly are the main revenue stream of the company. The Amway website pitches them as empowering people to live their best. That's a pretty selfless and noble mission for a company that turned over $8.8 billion in 2018. So how did DeVos and Van Andel scale their business from boxes of nutritional supplements in their garage to a global household name? Strap in, because this is where it gets dark. A quick search on the internet will bring up a lot of negative press about Amway. You won't struggle to find testimonials from ex-members ranting about the company's sinister recruiting practices. A common theme from recruiters bears a striking similarity to how cults recruit followers. Love bombing, including excessive compliments about a target's personality and intelligence, presenting mentors as having solutions to your problems, and answering questions with a question. That's how Amway workers are trained. This means it's hard to get a straight answer about anything. In fact, workers are trained not to mention Amway, as if the first rule of Amway is do not talk about Amway. You'll notice this if an old school friend asks you to dress up nicely and meet them at a mediocre apartment. You'll be told it's a party, but in fact, it's a motivational seminar where the name is only revealed at the very end of the captivating show. It's such an effective recruitment tool that newer MLMs use it, including Venmo. Well, before it was shut down for being a pyramid scheme. These techniques are designed to disarm new members into a state of safe ambivalence, but the indoctrination doesn't stop there. Members are told that they can boost their earnings by attending seminars, reading books, and even going on dedicated cruises for how to sell Amway. The best part is they are available at discounted prices. Of course, the discount had to be bought by becoming a member, and if you're still paying to pursue these life-affirming activities, what's the problem with taking a hit now? You're gonna make it big, right? Not exactly. The number of resources that Amway members are encouraged to research, and we mean encouraged in the Tony Soprano sense, never seems to end. The good news is the internal reward system means that purchasing these products boosts your seller level, like an achievement on Xbox. Except instead of unlocking a bonus for making money, you get patted on the back for remortgaging your house. As you might expect, the internal reward system is nothing more than gold stars on a school chart. Empty, meaningless titles that give the lucky ones access to, wait for it, early bird tickets to more seminars and lectures and conventions. And that's assuming you can even understand the convoluted grading system. In essence, the company grew the same way a donkey is led by a carrot on a stick. A lot of the strange recruitment practices are covered in the book Amway, The Cult of Free Enterprise, which was written by a former distributor called Stephen Butterfield. The blurb says Amway is an authoritarian movement in the middle class that has an alliance with the religious right. According to Donna, in her 5-star Amazon review, my jaw dropped each time I read verbatim the lines and phrases I'd heard come from our former upline's mouth. My husband was recruited into Amway by his friend just under a year ago, and by the time, myself and another actually had to have an intervention to show him how much money we were spending on the business. He'd almost lost $30,000. He made his final decision to get out of Amway when he heard that his friend who'd recruited him had lost almost $200,000, been evicted, and lost all the family's possessions and is now destitute. By now, you're probably asking yourself, if this thing is so iffy and people are getting ripped off, how is it still around? Good question. And the answer to that is power. Amway has its fingers in many pies. In fact, it's got so many fingers in so many pies that drawing it out might make it look like a triangle hierarchy, which is a 2D pyramid. Take its hotel. That's right, it owns a hotel. In 1981, the Pantland Hotel reopened as the Amway Grand Plaza Hotel in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Though the hotel is technically owned by AHC Plus Hospitality, formerly known as Amway Hospitality Corporation, which is technically owned by Alticor, which is technically owned by Amway. For reference, Amway's HQ is based in Otta Township, which is only 10 miles away. Alticor is run by both the DeVos and Van Andel families, and acts as a parent company to Amway, Amway Global, as well as the manufacturing and distribution companies that are used by Amway and its entities. If this is starting to sound confusing, that's kind of the point. The Inception-style approach to businesses within businesses helps to keep things covert. It's hard to know where Amway starts and ends, which makes it harder for regulators and authorities to investigate allegations of white-collar crime. And those are just some of Amway's assets. The company and the two families at the top also have owners of sports teams like the NBA's Orlando Magic, as well as the indoor arena where the teams train, aka Amway Center. You might have seen it in some notable WWE Royal Rumbles or in front of the countless musicians who have played there, including Paul McCartney, Elton John, Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, and of course, Nickelback. Real estate isn't the only thing Amway is interested in, though it is one of the few areas where they are happy to have their name known. They also directly and indirectly fund social programs, especially within the fundamentalist religious angles. The DeVos Family Foundation has given millions to groups like the Family Research Center, an evangelical activist and think tank whose rhetoric around gay marriage was widely seen as homophobic. In 2020, the FRC was approved of the status change by the IRS as it claims to be an association of churches. This means that they operate as a nonprofit organization whose religious status shields it from public inspection, and is no longer required to submit public financial information. This means we can't know exactly how Amway's money is used to influence the government, but we have a good reason to be suspicious when we reveal how the family is structured. Richard DeVos would father 4 children. One is Richard. He grew up in the family business and tried to enter politics when he ran an unsuccessful bid to become governor of Michigan. His wife would fare better in Washington. Betsy DeVos was picked to be the United States Secretary of Education by then-President Donald Trump, whose election campaign had received huge support from the Amway families. In fact, Trump's last rally in his bid to beat Hillary Clinton was held at the DeVos Place Convention Center. Betsy is familiar with billionaires, having been a daughter of manufacturing tycoon Edgar Prince. His business ownership made him one of the wealthiest men in Michigan during his lifetime. But he was also interested in faith, which is how he would come to co-found, you guessed it, the Family Research Council. He also had a son, Eric. He's a businessman too. The former U.S. Navy SEAL officer was the founder of the private military company Blackwater.
Some people will always hate the name Blackwater. They might not like me. I am perfectly comfortable with that.
He gave that up, though, to start a private equity firm in Hong Kong. You can make your own speculation about what exactly he is getting up to over there. What we can say is that Blackwater Worldwide was contracted by the United States in 2003 during the Second Gulf War. However, the new Iraqi government that emerged following the removal of Saddam would revoke Blackwater's license in 2007 when Blackwater contractors were convicted of killing 17 Iraqi civilians during the Nasr Square massacre.
A verdict this morning in a shooting that inflamed worldwide anger over the war in Iraq. Blackwater security guards shot more than 30 unarmed Iraqis in Baghdad in 2007. More than a dozen of them died.
Though Trump would eventually pardon them.
Survivors and relatives of victims of this massacre, and that is the way it is absolutely remembered in Baghdad, as a massacre, expressed outrage that President Trump would pardon these 4 former Blackwater guards.
So much for empowering people to live their best. That explains why George W. Bush cameoed at the funeral for one of the Amway founders. It also explains how the resources and connections in real estate, entertainment, charity, politics, and military, both nationally and internationally, shield them from scrutiny. Anytime the FTC comes knocking, they just need to pick up the phone and hit speed dial to be connected to a guy who knows a guy. After all, what's a fine for running a pyramid scheme when you can elect a president to personally pardon convicted murderers in your employment? Okay, that's stretching it a bit. Amway didn't own Blackwater. At least we don't think it did. Though we wouldn't be surprised if someone from the company that bought the military contractor is on the board of at least one of Amway's subsidiaries. What isn't in doubt is that they are a force to be reckoned with. They have soldiers on the ground, lobbyists in Congress, politicians in their friend groups, religious leaders at their dinner parties, and bankrolls overseas. That's not a bad outcome for 2 guys who got their start shifting boxes of weight loss bars in their rented apartment. So, do you know anyone who tried to pull you into Amway? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked this video, check out our one on the fascinating history of the Mars family. And don't forget to subscribe to keep on learning how history works.